Good morning, Wabash. Giving this morning's chapel talk is Greg Castanias. He is a member of the class of 1987, the current president of the National Association of Wabash Men, and a Washington, D.C. partner based at the international law firm of Jones Day. In his law practice, he represents clients from all over the world in the U.S. courts. He has argued 3 cases before the Supreme Court of the United States and almost 40 of the highest stakes patent cases in the history before the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit Court in Washington. He lives in Northern Virginia with his wife Jane and his 2 daughters Alex and Ella Ann, giving his chapel talk entitled Free, Greg Castanias.
Good morning. Well, you've already heard my name is Greg Castanias, and I'm a member of the class of 1987, or as Jim Amadon calls it, the mighty class of 1987. 137 of us graduated that year, and one of us is still on campus. Until May of next year, I have the privilege of serving Wabash as the president of the National Association of Wabash Men, which is your college's alumni association. And it is a privilege indeed to serve this college, because I owe so much of what I have in this life to the opportunity that I had to spend 3.5 years here and another half year in Oxford, England, at Oxford University back in the 1980s. Today is tuition-free day. It marks roughly the point in time in the school year when the bill for your Wabash education stops being paid by you and your families and starts getting paid for by the generous gifts of Wabash alumni and friends. It is that simple. And to mark this day, we've painted Wabash green. I haven't seen the bench, so I'm saying it's figuratively been painted green, but maybe it's literally been painted green. I even went out last weekend and bought the greenest tie that Brooks Brothers had to offer. And I'm a pretty good choice for you to have as your chapel speaker on tuition-free day, because there's no way I could have afforded to attend Wabash College without the opportunity that was provided to me by some scholarships that were funded by alumni who came before me and allowed me to attend Wabash essentially tuition-free. Now, chapel talks, at least the ones that I've had the privilege of giving here, tend to take on the character of sermons. And typically, sermons are to enlighten the meaning of a text, like the Gospels when you go to church on Sunday and hear a sermon. But today I'm going to take as my text a single word: free. It has some different meanings, which we'll explore, but those meanings are related to each other. Now keep that word, free, in mind as I talk here today, because I'm going to speak of at least 3 different meanings of the word. Let's start with the obvious. Free can mean free of charge, as in tuition-free day. Now let me reflect on what that means to me. When my father passed away last year, I found on his desk a folder of papers that were related to me, and more specifically, to my education. One of those papers was the computerized report of my SAT scores. And yes, gentlemen, we did have computers back then. Back then, at least, you were required to, or allowed, I should say, to designate 3 schools, 3 institutions that could receive your SAT scores. If you sent them to more than 3, that would cost you extra money, so I had to pick carefully for those 3. For one of those slots, I picked Indiana University, what I regarded as the best and most affordable state institution in Indiana, the place I figured I'd end up going to college if I could scrape together the $2,000 or so that years I used tuition cost back then. Now, the second institution I picked was the Indiana Higher Education Commission. Now, the reason I picked the commission was that it gave out some modest grants and scholarships. I figured at this point that I was going to need every dollar I could get for college, since my parents were of, well, shall we just say, modest means. I figured that if I get $400 or $500 from the state, I could pay for the rest of my IU tuition and my books, and maybe find a cheap apartment in Bloomington if I worked waiting tables or something like that during college. The third institution I picked was one you may have heard of. A small liberal arts college founded in the 1800s, set in a semi-rural town dotted with classic halls of brick. And what was the name of that college? Where's Mr. Piggies? Mr. Piggies here? What was the name of that college? You are wrong. It was Bates College in Lewiston, Maine. Now, thank you, Terrence. Now, why did I do this? Why did a young man with no visible means of paying for college apply to an expensive, elite, Eastern liberal arts college, which last year, 2011, was the single most expensive college in the entire country? Now, even though my logic was seriously flawed, the answer was rather simple. My dad. He was a member of the Bates College class of 1950. And he didn't have the means to attend Bates either, but he had been able to attend because he flew B-17s in the European theater during World War II, and he was able to go there on the GI Bill. After 35 combat missions in Germany, he was able to attend Wabash College as a man in his mid-20s. Bates College as a man in his mid-20s. Now, I had no illusions that in 1983 I was going to be able to pay for a Bates education, but I thought that maybe if I could get in, something magical would happen, and there'd be some financial aid somewhere for a Bates legacy like me. But I quickly got a cold dose of reality once I read up a little more on Bates. It was very doubtful that I was going to be able to get in, since I was a pretty underachieving high school student. And even if I could get into Bates somehow, it was even less likely that I was going to get any appreciable financial aid. So I put that dream on the shelves. But right about the time that I shelved that dream, the dream of following in my dad's footsteps and wearing the maroon of a Bates Bobcat, I got a letter in the mail inviting me to visit Wabash College. I still have the letter somewhere in my house. I think it was even signed by Louis Salter, the Wabash president at the time. Because I had gotten a good score on my SATs, never mind the high school GPA thing, and I possessed the necessary physiology to attend Wabash College, I had been invited to a dinner at President Salter's home at Wabash College. Now, growing up in Indianapolis as I did, I'd certainly heard of Wabash. A lot of the leading businessmen and lawyers in Indianapolis were Wabash graduates. These guys were mostly customers of my dad and his restaurant. And I was looking forward to driving to Wabash, Indiana to see what this Wabash College was all about. Well, we did have computers, but we didn't have GPS instruments at the time. But I did eventually figure out that Wabash College was not in Wabash, Indiana, but in a town called Crawfordsville. It was right around this time of year in 1982, 30 years ago, probably even this week, that dinner took place. And while today at age 47, I'm a Washington, D.C. lawyer who flies over 100,000 miles a year, I've been in New York City, Boise, Idaho, and San Diego, California, in addition to Crawfordsville in the last 2 weeks. Back then, at age 17, my drive from the north side of Indianapolis to Crawfordsville was going to be the longest car trip I had ever taken in my life by myself. So I set off with my AAA map of the state of Indiana, my route circled and highlighted, and I left home early enough so that I would have plenty of time to make it to dinner even if I got lost. A trip that I now make with my eyes closed, figuratively as far as you know, was as much of an adventure as an African safari for me. And fortunately, back in October 1982, I didn't get lost. Unfortunately, that meant I arrived in Crawfordsville 3 hours before the dinner that I was attending. So, what did I do with those 3 hours? Well, here's what I remember. I remember that I drove down to the Hooks drugstore, and only senior faculty and staff know what a Hooks drugstore is, west of campus off of State Road 32, and I bought a soda out of the machine there. That was the first part of my two-part plan. Second part was, what am I going to do now? So I've decided to drive around and explore Crawfordsville. And I happened upon the campus for the first time. And on that crisp fall day back in 1982, I first saw the Wabash College campus. Now, you guys know that we are blessed with a beautiful campus. In fact, I just got a note from your visitor, Michael Ruhlman from Cleveland, who was here 2 days ago commenting on how beautiful a campus Wabash was, and aside how engaged the students were and how much he wants to come back. Now, you guys know that this campus is beautiful, just like Michael saw, but it is never as beautiful as it is this time of year. The leaves in the arboretum are turning their flashing colors, and the sun comes through the trees just so. For me, it was love at first sight. This is what a college is supposed to look like. The dinner was even better. President Salter and his wife, Marianne, were the most gracious hosts you could imagine. By luck, or maybe by design, this future English major was seated next to Dr. Don Herring, the chairman of the English department. He blessed with a southern accent out of Faulkner, a ribald sense of humor out of Chaucer, and an infectious laugh that came out between drags on his famous Winston cigarettes. If seeing the campus was love at first sight, the experience of that dinner sent me into full-bore, head over heels, ass over elbows infatuation. As I retraced my steps back to Indianapolis that night, I knew one thing. I had to go to Wabash College. But how? If Bates College was going to be out of my reach financially, if I was going to have to struggle to afford to attend Indiana University, how was I going to pay for a private college, one that cost a whopping $5,600 a year in tuition that year alone? Now, I know that seems quaint now, but believe me, that was a lot of money, just like tuition now is a lot of money. But the answer to that question came a few months later in the form of an honor scholarship. Back then, honor scholarships were administered a little differently. There were 20 honor scholarships handed out. The people who scored in the top 10 got full tuition 4-year scholarships. The people who scored in the next 10 got 3/4 tuition scholarships for 4 years. And to use an expression that I've heard some of you guys use, who has 2 thumbs and finished 10th? This guy. My prayers were answered, and I got to go to Wabash College for what was pretty much the only price that my family could afford, free. I still paid for tuition, for room and board, books, and the occasional visit to Tommy's. I was grateful indeed for this scholarship, but I was grateful in the abstract. I didn't know how colleges were funded or where this scholarship money came from. Having had a father who attended an elite liberal arts school on the GI Bill, I sort of assumed that George Peabody had it right when he said, "Education is a debt due from present to future generations." But as I was struggling to find money for college back in the 1980s, it seemed like Wabash College was the only place that was honoring that debt to future generations. And I am so, so grateful that it did. But the debt was not just being honored by Wabash College, the institution. It was being honored by the Wabash men who came before me, the ones who Dick Ristine called upon when the college needed to raise funds to enhance the endowment. Some of them are honored here with names on rooms, buildings, or professorships. Some of them are more anonymous, recognized only in the agate type of donors in Wabash Magazine or now on the website. But this I know. When Wabash College handed me an honor scholarship and made my dreams possible, Wabash made sure that it would count me as an alumni donor in the future. You guys know that not many students pay full tuition here. If you have any scholarship, or any grant, or any aid, or Wabash-issued loan to go to college here, thank an alumnus. Seriously. Over 50% of the college's living alumni participated in the just concluded Challenge of Excellence campaign. And I know that many current students, led by the Student Senate and my friends Alex and Jeremy, also participated generously in the challenge. Thank an alumnus, and thank your fellow students. But even if you're one of the dozen or so, 2 dozen or so, however many there are, the very few students who pay full tuition here, you still owe an enormous debt of gratitude to these alumni, because even the full tuition bill doesn't cover the cost of your Wabash education. I'll give you an example of this. I was able to study in Oxford in my junior year because Wabash took my honor scholarship, paid my Oxford tuition, paid my room and board in Oxford, and because the dollar was so strong against the pound back in 1985, they sent the check for the difference to my dad, who was then able to send me a few dollars every month so that I could take some side trips away from Oxford, visit some local pubs. As it turned out, Oxfordshire is where he'd been stationed when he was flying B-17s in World War II. And I didn't know that until I got there. You see this same kind of Wabash generosity in today's immersion trips, which are funded by alumni and friends of the college. We're not DePauw, which charges its students an additional $3,000 to $5,000 to have analogous experiences during that school's so-called winter term. We're not DePauw. Well, there's an understatement. Let me turn to a second meaning of the word free. That's free as in freedom, liberty, one of those basic American values. This is a liberal arts college. Since so many of you young men identify yourselves, at least right now, as political conservatives, you've probably wondered why we call the Wabash experience a liberal arts education. In fact, I'll bet somebody's come up with the idea that we really ought to call it the conservative arts education. To some extent, you can blame the Republican political consultants who have made the word liberal a bad word. It's not. Liberal has its roots in the Latin liber, meaning free. The liberal arts education is the education that men need to be free men. Not slaves, but free men, people who participate in self-governance and in public life as citizens and leaders. You men enjoy more freedom here than any other college students anywhere in the country. Unlike other colleges, Wabash is the only liberal arts college that stands behind the ideal of a liberal education by imposing upon you only a single basic gentleman's rule. All you have to be is a gentleman and a responsible citizen. I say that like it's a little thing. All you have to be, because that's actually everything. It flows naturally and inexorably from a Wabash education. If you truly can think critically, the cornerstone of the liberal arts, you will naturally act responsibly. That's the gentleman's rule, and that's the whole theory of a liberal arts education. You will become better citizens that way. If you act responsibly, you will, by your deeds and words, lead effectively. And if you do all of those things, that is the recipe for living a life humanely. And right there, you have the college's mission statement. Think critically, act responsibly, lead effectively, live humanely. But I remember a patriotic song we used to sing in grade school. I think it went something like, I'm not going to sing, you'll be grateful. Freedom isn't free. You've got to pay the price, you've got to sacrifice for your liberty. I'm going to tell you this, gentlemen. If you think that freedom or liberty consists of doing whatever you want to do and having no obligations to others, you simply do not understand what it means to be a free man. You have been reading too much Ayn Rand and not enough John Donne. No man is an island entire of itself. Each is a part of the continent. Send not to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. Don't like poetry? Okay. Then read Teddy Roosevelt's speech that he gave in 1910, The Man in the Arena. To my mind, it is the finest thinking on the topic of citizenship that has ever been written, and almost all of it speaks to the topic of citizenship. And what is citizenship? The obligations of a free man. He gave this speech at the Sorbonne, and I doubt that France's esteemed educational edifice has ever heard a more important lecture than the one Teddy Roosevelt gave in 1910. One quote from it. The good citizen in a republic must realize that he ought to possess two sets of qualities, and that neither avails without the other. He must have those qualities which make for efficiency, and that he also must have those qualities which direct the efficiency into channels for the public good. He is useless if he is inefficient. The good citizen is not a good citizen unless he is an efficient citizen. But if a man's efficiency is not guided and regulated by a moral sense, then the more efficient he is, the worse he is, the more dangerous to the body politic. Courage, intellect, all the masterful qualities serve but to make a man more evil if they are merely used for that man's own advancement with brutal indifference to the rights of others. What I hear in Teddy Roosevelt's words are what your president and my friend Pat White means when he quotes W.B. Yeats in Dreams Begin Responsibilities. My dreams began here. And here began my responsibilities. Why has this father of two little girls, girls who will not be able to attend Wabash, continued to be so active in the life of this little college in Indiana? Why did I turn around from a business trip to San Diego to fly back from my home in Virginia, to leave my family behind in Virginia, to get to Crawfordsville last night to give this talk today? Why do the 25 members of the board of directors of the National Association of Wabash Men beg, borrow, and steal time and talents that might be used in their careers to plan and implement programs like LEAD, which stands for Linking Education and Alumni Development? Programs to help our students, you guys, see the link between your classroom education and your larger role as citizens of the Wabash community. Why do these devoted alumni, as well as our trustees and other alumni, why do they give treasure from their earnings that might be better kept in their family or selfishly to themselves? The answer, guys, is right in front of you. In our dreams, dreams which so many of us have realized thanks to our Wabash education, began, not ended, but began our responsibilities. You guys are my responsibility. You are here because we were here once. And we were here because of men who are in the later seasons of their life or who are gone now. And what that means, gentlemen, is that the next generation of Wabash men are your responsibility. Indeed, the future of Wabash is your responsibility. This is your obligation as a moral citizen of Wabash College, now and when you officially become an alumnus. If you do not understand this, then you are on a path to becoming the more dangerous and more evil man that Teddy Roosevelt talked about in The Man in the Arena. The man whose talents are exceptional, efficient is the way he used the term, but the man whose talents are exceptional but used only for selfish ends. Those are harsh words he used, dangerous and evil, but they fit. If you leave Wabash College and think that whatever education you got here was because of what you paid for it combined with your hard work alone, then you have missed the point entirely. Now, I said earlier that about 50% of our living alumni participated in the challenge of excellence by giving something or another. And our annual giving rate among alumni is in the mid-30% range. Among professional advancement people, which is to say the people who do this fundraising thing for a living, these numbers are a source of justifiable pride. But for a college whose slogans include "Wabash always fights" and "always means always," I find these numbers to be a little disappointing. I confess. Not just because Wabash could do even more fantastic things with a little more money, but also because that means in any given year, 60+% of Wabash alumni couldn't even be bothered to put a $5 bill in an envelope and send it to the college. For most American colleges, these giving rates are great. For Wabash men, I think it's pathetic. Always means always. Not 50% of the time, not 30% of the time, always. So men, I'm using this opportunity, the last time I get to address you as the president of the National Association of Wabash Men, as the president of your alumni body, I'm going to use this opportunity to say this to you. Put your money where your mouth is. Wabash always fights, and always means always, you say? Prove it. We've got some banks here, little piggy banks, I'm told. I don't know if they're actually piggy banks. No, that doesn't mean they're shaped like Terrence. Let me talk about responsible interactions with alumni for a moment. No, I'm just... we've got some banks here, and what we want you to do is take them back to your living unit, wherever you're living, put them on your dresser, throw your loose change, your pocket change at the end of the day in there. The alumni office will then collect them up in the middle of next semester sometime and count up the contributions. And more importantly, we'll count up the number of you who have made contributions. It doesn't matter that none of you is going to be able to endow a professorship with $8 in loose change, but it does matter that you understand that giving something back is expected of you and expected of all of us, now and evermore. As you guys say, always means always. But Mr. Castanias, my $2 or $10 won't make a difference, and it's certainly not the tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars that you successful alumni can give. That's nonsense. That's weak beer of an excuse. First of all, we're doing this because you need to get into and you need to stay in the habit of annual giving. Get in the habit now, continue it in your senior gift campaign, and keep giving to this wonderful little college happily ever after. Secondly, alumni giving rates are a big deal. They are. They get counted in the U.S. News rankings as 5% of the overall ranking of the school. 5% of our ranking in U.S. News and World Report is based directly on alumni giving percentages. And moreover, if you raise some more money for the college, faculty compensation and financial resources per student make up another 7 and 10% of the total in the U.S. News and World Report rankings. So a little bit of a nudge upward can affect positively 22% of the U.S. News and World Report ranking of this wonderful little college that seems to sometimes be hidden under a bushel in Crawfordsville, Indiana, from national attention. Moreover, higher giving percentages among alumni give our advancement office a huge leg up when they go out to foundations to seek grants. The foundations look at these alumni giving rates and they say, oh, so many of your alumni have skin in the game. This is a college worth our investing in. As you know, President White is fond of a quote from W.B. Yeats that I used earlier. There's another Yeats poem that I'm also fond of, but it contains a very ominous line. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. We have seen some things fall apart over the last several years, our world economy in particular. And this latest Challenge of Excellence campaign was a direct response to the economic needs of the college at that particular time in history. We needed to raise $60 million, and we got $68 million plus. Yay for us. And just over half of our alumni gave to the challenge. Yay for us again. Now, I'm an optimist generally, but what I see here is not achievement, but opportunity. I see about half of our alumni who weren't in it with us at all during the campaign, not even for $1, not a lousy buck. I see 65% of our alumni who didn't give to Wabash last year, not a dime, not a measly dime. So here is my dream, a dream I want you to share with me. My dream is that each Wabash student will take one of these banks back, put it on your dresser, fill it with $5, $10, or $15 worth of loose pocket change between now and next spring, and that when it is collected, we can say that 100% of our undergraduates made some kind of contribution to the annual fund. I want, and we'll talk about this later on this year, 100% of our senior class, the class of 2013, to participate in making a senior class gift to this college. And I'll tell you that seniors now, that the National Association of Wabash Men Board will put its money where my mouth is. And then we can say to those alums who weren't with us on the last campaign, who weren't with us last year in the annual fund, we can say to them, look at what these young men who don't have much money at this point in their lives did with their spare change. Surely you can make a similar sacrifice. My dream, which I want you to share, is that we can shame, yes, shame, these fellow alumni into joining the members of my board and other alumni leaders in throwing in with us for the future of Wabash College. My dream is a $4 million annual fund in the next 3 years. My dream is an annual alumni giving percentage that is at least over 40% and maybe approaching or even over 50%. And my dream is a permanent expectation of 100% participation in the senior gift campaign. My dream is that all of our alumni recognize that despite all of their hard work and achievements, they didn't do it alone. But my dream can't be achieved by my actions alone. I need your help. I need you to share this goal for Wabash College with me because it is what a responsible citizen and a responsible alumnus does, and because it is absolutely critical for the future of Wabash. And I need you, not some of you, but all of you, every single one of you, to join me in taking responsibility for this dream. It is the only way that can possibly happen because not I, but you guys are the future of Wabash College. I'm going to close by talking about one other kind of freedom. The freedom to be the college that Wabash College wants to be. We've been able to maintain Wabash College as one of the last colleges for men in this country. Most of you, I think, share the view that this is a good thing, that men who want such an education can freely choose to attend a small liberal arts college for men. Those choices are few and far between, guys. It's us, Hampden-Sydney in my new home state, and Morehouse. Even Deep Springs, that curious 2-year college on a working cattle and alfalfa farm in California with an enrollment of 26, announced on August 8th of this year that it would begin accepting applications from women for the class entering in 2013. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. The freedom to be Wabash College starts with the financial resources and alumni support that says, I want Wabash College to succeed. Single-sex colleges that have changed to coeducation have done so in largest part because of economic pressure. In 2001, I represented Wabash College at the inauguration of Hood College's current president, Ronald Volpe. Wabash sent a representative to the Hood College inauguration. Hood College, by the way, is in Maryland, sort of in my backyard, because Hood was an all-women's school, and Wabash has traditionally sent a representative who gets to dress up in academic regalia and pretend like he's a professor at commencement to the inaugurations of presidents of single-sex colleges. 2 years after I represented Wabash at that inauguration, Hood started accepting men into its residential program. Declining enrollments and financial pressures helped to force that decision for Hood. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Now, I've seen some t-shirts around campus that say Wabash forever. God, I hope that's true. But there's nothing written in stone that says that Wabash College has to survive forever, or even survive in something resembling its current state. It's going to take constant work, constant support from you, from my fellow alumni, and from the Wabash men of the future in order to ensure that Wabash College is free to do the work it is so excellent at doing. This, then, is your challenge, you fine gentlemen of Wabash College. It's tuition-free day, but freedom from tuition isn't free. In our dreams of what Wabash College is and should be, begin our responsibilities to ensure that Wabash can do for an unborn young man that which it did for me and that which it does for you. The great Rogie, he of free minds and free markets, said it best to the graduating senior class back in 1963. If the fate of this college is not important to you, to whom then is it important? I thank you for your attention.
All right, just a couple of brief announcements. As mentioned earlier, the banks will be given out in the back of the chapel, and those who return it next semester will be eligible to win an iPad or an HD TV. So make sure you guys turn those in. TGIF will be at Physide this week. Saturday, the swim team will be at Purdue. The football team will be home against Worcester. The game will start at 1 o'clock. And soccer will be home against Kenyon. That game will start at 2. Please rise and sing Old Wabash.